Copyright disclaimer: under the Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing.
Coming out in the past couple of hours, we're hearing that President Donald Trump has been rushed to the White House in an emergency, what appears to be war meeting, and all of his trips for the Memorial Weekend have been canceled, including, we're hearing, he has canceled attending his own son's wedding because there is an emergency meeting that he must attend at the White House. Now, let me go ahead and share with you the latest headlines that have just been coming out. We've been seeing this across social media platforms, and I've now been able to confirm it as it is starting to roll out across the news. You can see here, mainstream media, CBS News says that the U.S. is preparing for new military strikes against Iran. This has been coming out over the past couple of hours. Trump cancels his trip to his son's wedding, returns to Washington amid key moment on Iranian negotiations. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at social media platform X, as we're hearing that this has been unfolding here. Details have been coming out for a while now, but I wanted to make sure that it could be verified, and now we're hearing it is in fact being verified. Take a look here. This is coming out from Mr. Nick Sortor. Now, President Trump is now back in Washington, D.C. after canceling his weekend plans in New Jersey. CBS is reporting intelligence officials have also canceled Memorial Day plans and are on standby. Something may be imminent. We're hearing, yes, they're saying it looks like it is having to do directly with the conflict with Iran and the United States. Let's take a look at another one here. President Trump rushed back to the White House. Weekend golf plans scrapped. Top officials canceled holiday plans. And from CBS News, the article we actually just looked at, U.S. preparing new strikes against Iran, coming out just in the past couple of hours. Iran's army ready for enemy foolishness, Tasmin is reporting. In fact, we're hearing the Middle East is saying ready for the United States stupidity, as we're hearing that the United States is getting ready to attack. So Iran is saying the United States is stupid for what we are about to do. And we're hearing that now it is rolling out reports that we are likely about to enter into new conflict, new rounds of attacks.
Revelations chapter 11 and verse 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rechakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim out here pushing this gospel in truth and in sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. There's the brother Quan Watts come back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. And as you had seen, right, breaking news, Donald Trump, right, Nero 47, right, ultimately just, went back to Washington, D.C. to ultimately attend an emergency war council. Now, this emergency war council is ultimately dealing with, right, the conflict, right, between America, Israel, and Iran, right? And as you know, if you've been paying attention, right, if you're not living under a rock, right, we know that that first round of, conflict between America and Israel, and Iran, right? Iran was ultimately basically whooping the shit out of America and Israel, right? Bombarding Israel, and overwhelming their missile defense systems, right? Destroying American bases, right? Where America had to pull American troops out of those bases, out of those areas. Iran was using, cheaply made $35,000 to $50,000 drones, right? Mass producing them, whereas America and Israel was using $1 million missiles and missile defense systems and so on and so forth. And again, they were still being, overwhelmed, and there was Basically, peace offers ultimately made, from both sides, from Iran to America, America to Iran, and no peace deal was made. No peace deal, was accepted from either side. And ultimately that's because we're not in the time, of peace, right? Ezekiel 3:1, or it's like Ecclesiastes 3:1. To everything there was a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Verse 2, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time of embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, right? And all these is ultimately giving you the understanding that everything, right, that is done under the heavens, right? There is a time, a season, and a purpose to everything, right? Especially the times that we're in right now, right? We are in the time, right, of the end of this current rulership. We're in the time of the end of the wicked, right? And it's the Lord, what did he say? He said, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be destroyed, right? Which we know Babylon is ultimately the epicenter of wickedness that is being pushed in the earth, right? It is Esau, Edom's cash cow, right? The elites of the world, right? Which we know are Edomites, right? Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, right? Which are the, the elite banker families, right? The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, right? The Bowers, the DuPonts, the Gettys, the Oppenheimers, and so on and so forth. They ultimately currently are ruling the world, and they're using America, right, to push out, right, that wicked vibration, man. And we're at the time where America is going to be destroyed and they're going to be taken out of power. Verse 8 says, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. And again, as we've been seeing, right, throughout the last, this year, right, really last year and this year, since Trump came into office, right, and he ultimately changed the Secretary of Defense to the Secretary of War, right, tried to make a board of peace, and many, right, majority of America's allies, were not, trying to be a part of that board of peace, right, as well as what we're seeing now, right, between America and Iran, right, all these different peace deals and agreements and stuff like that not being struck but yet being introduced, and now we're at the time where they're about to go through, round two, firing, missiles on each other, which really Iran, only has the capability as of right now to fire on, U.S. bases, right, and fire on Israel, and again, we're going to see the second round of that, man. So again, showing you we are not in the time of peace, but we are in the time of war. And this right here is going to escalate, right? You got Iran ultimately calling America stupid, for what they're about to do, and whether it be in hours, days, right? Soon something is going to happen, right? America is ultimately probably, going to fire more rockets, more missiles. So is Israel, on Iran, and Iran is going to retaliate, man. This is going to get bad, man. And really, we hoping and we praying it does get bad. We hoping and praying, that the Lord ultimately continues to escalate, this situation. Which we know, before it can get to, the fullness of World War III, which is the use of those ICBM nuclear missiles, where we understand that, Jacob's trouble, the hour of temptation, right, which is where they make, the RFID microchip, right, mandatory, right? The fulfillment of Revelations 13 verse 16 on down, right, has to happen before that can, before this can take place. But nonetheless, right, we want to continue to get worse, man. Right? We're already seeing the infrastructure, right, for all these different laws and policies and bills, right, surrounding the stable coin, and these data centers are going up. More and more people are taking the RFID microchip, getting connected to the BCI, the brain computer interface, and they're saying by 2030, right, they want to get, ultimately do away with cell phones, man. So we understand the times that we're in. We understand, what is about to take place, man. We are at the complete end of this current rulership in this current society, man. And it's a beautiful sight, right? For those who are truly in the know, those who truly, have the spiritual eye salve, right, to see, right? This place is over. This place is done for, man. But we understand that the last two major prophecies have to come to pass in order for this place to be completely removed, and we're in that time, This is about to get bad, man, as we just read, right? World War III, right? The third world cometh quickly, It's around the corner, man. We're at the complete end, right? Let me grab this precept. Con, I found it. This is Jeremiah 51 and verse 12. It says, set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare the ambushes. For Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushua, hath both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thy end is come in the measure of thy covetousness, man. And this is exactly what we're seeing, right? The end, right? And we're looking down the barrel of the end of America, the end of a wicked and adulterous generation, man. Wicked and adulterous rulership, right? Yahweh Shem Shai is ultimately going to destroy Babylon, because this is the end game, right, for what we're seeing happen, right? We're looking at, the beginning of that horrible vision, right? As you read it, 2nd Esdras, the 15th chapter, right? Verses 28 on down, right? The Carmenians, right, as the scriptures talks about, those are talking about the Iranians, right? The dragons of Arabia, going into these different, so-called Muslim nations, right? Gathering together, right? To ultimately ban against, basically gather together against Babylon, against America, joining Russia, right? Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, right? The Persians, which are Iranians, right? Ultimately being, allied to Russia, right? And eventually, again, all of these different nations, right? The conglomeration of nations, right? Including those who at one point, were allied to America, all are going to ban against America and fire those ICBM nuclear missiles, man. And this is what we're looking down the barrel of, the destruction of Babylon is about to take place, man, and it's going to take place really soon, right? We're just ultimately seeing the puzzle pieces, right, being put in place. All the dominoes are starting to fall, We just have to continue to be patient, right? Continue to wait, right? Until Yahweh Shemel Shah rise up to the prey, But I just want to hit this, quick little lesson, man, through the spirit, man. Lord will is edifying. Lord will straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh. Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak Wadash, double honor to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders, great millstone. Till next time I say shalom.